I want to talk about this excellent profile of Lincoln Riley in Sports Illustrated by Greg Bishop, but I am reminded that Mike Stoops played 2 high safeties against a triple option team for an entire game. Holy crap. And Lincoln Riley managed to coach through that. Yeesh. So the headline of this story is Lincoln Riley could be the ideal coach in a year like 2020. And at 36, turning 37, might just be right. So I took like 3 pages of notes on this thing. And there's some outstanding quotes in here, but there's also some outstanding observations on the part of Bishop, who conducted this interview with Riley in June and managed to be able to write around that. And one of the first things that he writes about at the top of this profile is Lincoln Riley and his coaches telling recruits all spring, just wait till we get good. Meaning, despite 5 straight Big 12 titles, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, CeeDee Lamb, first rounders, Heisman winners, Riley knows he's not where Clemson, Alabama, even LSU are after getting stomped a mud hole in and walked dry by the Bayou Bengals in the Peach Bowl. And he knows that they're trying to build toward that. But I also appreciated that he acknowledged he's not where they want to be. And saying just wait till we get good is exactly what I would want to hear from Lincoln Riley. A guy who is not sitting here resting on his laurels saying, no, we're successful. Being successful counts for something. Yeah, it does. That's why you're getting an extension in the race. But that ain't going to help me. I don't get that extension in the race. I need a national championship. I need to be able to tell LSU, Clemson fans, Alabama fans, Ohio State fans to stuff it. I'm tired of getting embarrassed in this thing. And him acknowledging that is a big deal, right? The next note that I took was Riley has spent the offseason reading books about Bill Walsh and the West Coast offense, hoping to incorporate some concepts about, but also wanting to learn more about how to sustain success. He said, I was really interested in how he, Bill Walsh, was able to maintain that. The guys I study have been guys who have been able to take winning teams, championship teams, whatever, and continue to build no matter what. And that no matter what part is really interesting to think about, because we're at this age where the pandemic is revealing so much about these college football coaches. We're seeing what they're built to withstand and what they're not. You could be Mike Gundy, where every move is a bad move, and we take away your speaking privileges because you just make it worse. Or you could be Lincoln Riley, who I want to get to in some depth here about what he has been able to do in this climate of not just the pandemic, but racial unrest, particularly as it pertains to Black Lives Matter, with a bunch of black players on his team. So this note from Bishop I just thought was outstanding. This summer will mark when the coach of the future became the coach of the turbulent present. Again, making reference to how Riley has been future think on offensive football, and even how to respond to recruits and how to respond to visitors and signees by going, no, we're going to be all in on name, image, and likeness. It's coming. Let's embrace it. Let's get the brands going for the signees. Let's do photo shoots in Dallas and Los Angeles. Let's turn this into production that it is. Meanwhile, you got Dabo Swinney talking about, I'll quit college football if it turns into pro sports. Well, then quit! Go! Walk! Somebody else will coach that team. And isn't that what they tell me about the kids all the time? Next man up? Yeah, next doggone dude up. Get up out the paint. Don't want you on the blacktop, no how. You know, I don't understand it. And yet, for once, my guy of my team seems to be making all the right moves at a really interesting point in one of the most conservative states in the union. And I'll get to that, right? One of the things that I also thought was interesting about this piece is this paragraph. As the world descends into chaos, Riley told his assistants not to make excuses, to find opportunity in the tumult. He asked his players, what can I do better for you? He had always told both groups to look at each season like a puzzle to find creative solutions. It's still a puzzle. Same philosophy. Why change? Making reference to the racial unrest and how his players have been operating in this age of Black Lives Matter. I mean, he's got former John Marshall standout and #1 player in the 2017 class, State of Oklahoma for him, Justin Broyles, standing in the middle of his neighborhood with a megaphone, talking about Black Lives Matter around Juneteenth. He's got Pat Fields. He's got Trey Brown. He's got so many of my kids under his purview. And what is he's looked to them and said, hey, tell me what you need. I'm here to support you. Jamal Morris told a story on the Twitters of a reporter, white lady, called him up saying, hey, has Lincoln Riley tried to muzzle you guys as far as what you've had to say about Black Lives Matter? And Morris told her straight up, no. More than that, he wants us to talk if we want to talk. He's not saying everybody got to talk, but he's not going to restrain us. He's been nothing but positive and saying, what else do you need from me? He said, I never heard another word from her, and she didn't write a story because apparently he didn't tell her what she wanted to hear, which is a criticism of journalists that I hear all the time, and I understand, right? He got to this point mostly by following his instincts, but also with his math brain, which we'll talk about. But Joe Castiglione has a couple of really outstanding quotes in this piece, one of which is, we're all trying to figure out where our targets are, but this backdrop will show you who Lincoln is. He understands his surroundings as well as anybody I have seen. Castiglione even compared Tom Cruise in Top Gun to Lincoln Riley, which I guess makes him Maverick. But anybody who's watched Top Gun closely knows that Maverick is the bad guy. But since my favorite 4-year-old just likes the bad guys the mostest, I'm here for that as well. And I can see where he's coming from, talking about following around the MiG with the target and keeping it locked on, because that's what he was referencing. He was talking about how Lincoln Riley is very comfortable with a moving target. He's very comfortable in chaos. He is still orderly. He still knows how to function, and nothing is too big for him. Again, still continue to marvel at what this man has been able to do, especially as growing up in Muleshoe, his plan was marry his wife, Caitlin. They were going to eat unlimited breadsticks at Olive Garden. He was going to coach high school football. She was going to be the cheerleading coordinator. Then Mike Leach takes over Texas Tech and says, hey, Lincoln, you want to be a student coach? You want to give up this thing about walking on? So at 19 years old, Riley makes an about face that I'm sure so many women who are either with or married to powerful men can see that change straight up. Riley goes from, I'm just going to be hanging out and going to Texas Tech, having a good time, to now he's all in on being an assistant. He's going to follow around guys that quite honestly are old enough to be his granddad, trying to figure out how to be a college football coach. And Leach all the time is imparting wisdom to him that I value, right? Because while I don't agree with Mike Leach's politics, I genuinely adore the man that he is, precisely because he approaches football the way that I think you should approach football. Leach taught Riley how to think. He told Riley, challenge him in meetings, to give little thought to losing jobs or games, to dismiss how football had been played for decades, winning instead by cultivating an outlaw spirit that encouraged innovation. If there is one thing that I would say that I love the most about Mike Leach, it's that he is not afraid of your intellect. He embraces it. When Leach himself has been asked to talk about Riley, as opposed to talk about Bill Bedenbaugh or Dennis Simmons or Cale Gundy or Dana Holgerson or Sonny Cumbie, or on and on and on it goes with his coaching tree of air raid disciples, the thing he says about Riley is most coaches come off of a conveyor belt. You do exactly what your coach tells you to do. You don't really think about it. You just go ahead and do it, and you do it that way because that's the only way you know how to do it. Riley did not do that. He took Leach at his word, where he would challenge him in meetings. He did ask if they could try something different. And I think that's one of the reasons why when he became the interim offense coordinator as Ruffin McNeil's interim head coach at Texas Tech, 26 wasn't really that big a deal because Ruffin understood that he could do the job. But he was still so young that Michael Crabtree had to tell the security guard outside the Cotton Bowl, hey, man, you got to let him in. He's our coach, because the security guard didn't think that Riley was the offensive coordinator assistant. He thought he was a kid coming down out of the stands trying to get in. So it took the Biletnikoff award winner to be like, yo, hey, this is the dude that actually runs the offense. We got to have him. And I love that story because, you know, doesn't seem to affect Riley that much. And then we get to this place where he's trying to figure out how to be a college football coach in the age of a pandemic. After canvassing scientific experts and reading summaries of studies, which is the thing I've been doing, he didn't want to assume additional unnecessary risk. He saw even the times his players spent away from the facility as a potential advantage. Every day he didn't rush them back, his medical staff could learn more about how to protect them while health companies develop vaccines and tests and better PPE, which has been his move from the jump. From the jump, he says, the longer I can go just figuring out what people that are smarter than me are saying and what they need us to do to play football, the better off we are. And when we saw kids get rushed back in June, a la Dana Holgorsen at Houston, University of Texas, and on, you saw positive tests pop up. And Pat Fields took notice. He said, look, you saw a lot of these universities rush people back and it blew up on them. Coach Riley took a different approach from everybody else in the country, especially in schools in the Power 5. And then there's how the assistants, the men who work for Riley, describe him. And remember, he's the youngest of these guys. He is the youngest assistant on his staff, right? Because, you know, he's head coach. But assistants describe Riley as cerebral, intellectual, and brilliant, like he's a mathematician who fell into coaching. And I've said this before, and you probably have suspected it yourself, but his memory is photographic, even if you won't say so. Mayfield says the same thing, and Alex Grinch, who is a no-nonsense type of dude, says that's not just a rumor. He remembers everything. But usually when you have that kind of person with an analytical brain, a math brain, you lose a sense of humanity. You lose a sense of a love of instinct. And that's actually what Riley thrives at. I thought this particular fact was interesting because I haven't seen it printed anywhere else, and I like to think of myself now as a Riley-ophile. He's the rare offensive specialist who says he doesn't grade his quarterbacks. He doesn't grade them. He says, look, I ought to know. I don't care if it's 98% or 87%. I made this decision on grading the quarterbacks at East Carolina. My gut told me it was the wrong decision. I made the change midway through the second game. We were pretty good. Yeah, they were. Shane Gard turned out to be a dude. Now, then there's this note that's apropos of nothing except Mike Leach. Mike Leach had a painting of himself as a scimitar hung in his office at Texas Tech. I just love that. That's a great that's a great mood setter there, Mike. So take it back to 2014 when Josh Heupel's offense is no longer working. The offense that Bob Stoops asked him to go to, the offense that Bob Stoops will later fire Josh Heupel for running. And I'm not sure that they're on speaking terms as it is. You get Bob Stoops at an annual coaching camp where he runs into Hal Mumme, who is the godfather of the air raid offense. And he asked Mumme, how come everybody in our conference can run our offense better than we can run our offense? To which Mumme and Gil Brandt told him, there are two Texas Tech assistants I need you to take a look at. One of them is Sonny Cumbie. The other one is Lincoln Riley. So he hires Riley, and we get the guy that made him feel good enough to retire. That's not a small thing. Because the thing that Bob Stoops wanted most for his walkout was to know that he wasn't leaving the program in a lurch. And in doing so, he not only got one of the foremost offensive football minds, but a man who says, hey, I want to get former players to hop on Zoom with my younger players to talk about race relations, social justice, and real-world issues that we have to confront in football today. You get a man who did not ignore Black Lives Matter, or worse, espouse ignorant notions like racism doesn't exist in college football in America. He let his counterparts make unforced errors. Sign of a great professional boxer and chess player. He posted BLM on his Instagram page, said BLM in news conferences, and told his players he not only would attend a demonstration, but that he would also speak at it, which he did. Show me where Mike Gundy's doing that. You don't see too many coaches in college football doing that, Fields said. It's Pat Fields. It's hard right now to be a black man in America, seeing everything that's going on. At points, you feel like giving up. But when Coach Riley has our back, it makes me want to feel hopeful. Amen. When Fields worked out with players from other schools this spring, they expressed envy at the culture Riley built. And you want to know how that works in recruiting? Watch. Riley said, I hope our guys know who we are and would have expected that of us before any of this. I hope it's not surprising for them. Goodness me. And he learned how to do this watching Bob Stoops, of all people. In 2015, y'all remember the SAE incident where we got SAE frat members thinking they could just yell N-words into video while they're going to their winter formal. Eric Stryker famously takes off his shirt, yells Snapchat, gets deleted. But what happens for the team is players told Bob Stoops they plan a walkout in response. And Stoops supported them. He told his assistants, we're not practicing for a good while. Let them express themselves. Listen to them. Be there for them, however long it takes. So that when the players returned to practice, they were even more loyal to their coach because he had been loyal to them and their principles and his own. Riley thought that is how you win 190 games at one place. And I've said this to so many people, and I'll say it to you. I will do everything in my power for the folks who can do something for me when I can't do it for myself. My loyalty in that way knows no bound because I have built my life in such a way that I can't actually count on anybody. I have to assume that something's going to go wrong. I don't get to assume that my parents can afford to put me through college or that I'm ever going to be in a position to buy a house or that the world doesn't look at me and first make a characterization about me on my tattoos and my dreads and my shirts and my gauges. I have built this life to where, cool, I expect you to give up on me. I expect you not to have my back. And I can't tell you how important it is when that does happen. That's such a huge deal for me. And to know that a guy like Lincoln Riley will have the back of so many of these players, so many of my kids, is not something I take for granted. Especially when I know that the guy just up at Stillwater doesn't think that way. Mike Gundy had to be threatened to get to know his players. Lincoln Riley says, I want them to know from jump. There's nothing that I won't do for them. And this is also again, being mentored by Bob Stoops. They would have marathon advice sessions that would last for hours. And Riley showing his work ethic. When he found out he got the job, when he was being promoted to head coach, he celebrated staying up until 1 a.m., sent missives to recruits saying, I'm the guy and I'm going to be here, spent an hour recapping with his family, caught a nap, and then was in the weight room at 6 a.m. the next day. And he told his players what he's telling them today. Kenneth Murray put it this way: I've got your back. There's nothing more important. There is nothing more important in life. And with this air raid, we've seen Riley, who is a renegade for running it, has not only passed for normal, he's achieved normality for other coaches like Graham Harrell, who says, hey, Oklahoma winning with the air raid and some variation of it and that philosophy of let's just make preordained reads, let's make it simple, let's go quick. It no longer makes it a gimmick. It's something that you could just do it at every level. Because you would see these offensive coordinators and assistants for Leach would say, we put up the best offensive numbers in football each and every year. We can't get jobs. And then you get a Lincoln Riley. And you have an opportunity that he has not wasted. And I'm going to remember this quote from Joe Castiglione for a very long time. We're watching a coach with extraordinary intellect develop before our eyes. That is an extraordinary experience to behold. Again, I say, amen. There have been so few cool white guys in my life, especially at that height. But when I know that that guy is in charge, and I know that that guy is making all the right decisions, I look at you and I say, why not you? I'm 33. Lincoln Riley is 36. We are not that different. If you can root for him, you can root for us. Love that.